reverse. And yeah, I loved the debate before. So I feel like just kind of continuing where we were. So reverse resources was created with the exact question in mind of like, how can we not just change consumer behavior, but consumer behavior is just one fraction of a big, really huge system that fashion industry is. And how can we create a change that is triggered from the digitization, data exchange, and the business case of data exchange? So yeah, 10 years ago, this company was launched with the first idea to create a marketplace for textile waste, and we were looking at dead stock materials first, starting from garment factories in Bangladesh. I know that there is somebody here from Bangladesh today, so really good to see you. But now, 10 years later, we are fully working on recyclable textile waste, cutting scraps from garment production to reach highest possible textile-to-textile recycling. And while we are focusing on building a SaaS, software as a service platform, because the textile-to-textile industry, recycling industry is in such an early stage, we are doing a lot more than just offering a software. We are also helping to connect the stakeholders, do research, optimize processes, create standards, all that takes to actually build that supply chain of textile waste from source to recycling in such a way that it would be fully transparent, fully traceable. The data for digital product passport would be there eventually, and other things. Today, we work with data from 34 countries already. The biggest countries database we have are Bangladesh and India, where we have the largest projects going on. We are just expanding our team to also work from Pakistan and Vietnam and Cambodia and Indonesia this year. So we are expanding fast. We have 18 largest fashion corporates on the platform, tracking their waste through the platform. And the database is today probably the biggest database that has textile waste information by composition to say what is cotton, what is polyester, how much is polycotton, how much polycotton elastan, because the global statistics does not provide such information whatsoever. So this is in the nutshell of what we do. I also kind of thought of walking through how we got there, and then eventually talk about what are the main principles of actually establishing a digital system that works well or serves the purpose. So when we started, there was no topic around regulation yet. This is currently a huge topic, but yeah, doing this for 10 years, we haven't been able to rely on regulation. We have been needing to rely on the industry incentives itself. So the large brands calling out that we will become circular by 2030 started the movement. And this started to change how the industry was talking about waste. The other thing that we have been relying on is that there is a huge amount of different recycling technologies that are being developed and who are entering the market. Mechanical cotton recycling, shredding textile waste to fiber and spinning to yarn has been around for ages, but the quality wasn't interesting for fashion industry. But now I would say like 5 years ago, it started to become super interesting. So this is where the volumes of textile to textile recycling started to grow. Chemical cotton recycling with Renewcell and Södra maybe being the most well-known here, using cotton to produce pulp for viscose production. This is huge volume that they need, high quality cotton. And the only way to actually source it has been from industrial waste, because post-consumer waste you can't sort by fiber composition as accurately as they would need in the very beginning, when they are just starting and haven't yet optimized their processes for other compositions. So while whole Europe is talking about there is too much waste, there's nothing to do with it, recycling sector, we are seeing that there is hyper competition for waste, for certain types of waste like white cotton, for example. There is just the lack of supply chain that would actually deliver feasible feedstock for recycling is today a bigger problem than the technology itself of recycling. So that's where we started to look into how can we get the feedstock out there with least cost and highest quality so that recyclers can actually rely on this. Initially, we started by looking into the business case of, for us, make it simple as a business case should be. So we were looking at how can we get waste from garment factories to recyclers in the most efficient way. We realized that every factory has a small volume of similar waste. They don't have time or interest to manage the storage cost. So we understood that waste handlers actually are playing a crucial role there, where they help to aggregate, they help to do quality check and deliver the waste. It's just that their business case of buying it cheap and selling it high price was creating a wrong incentive for them, not wanting to share information. So we kind of looked into the business case and of how we can actually involve waste handlers more as a service providers. And the next thing we got into trouble with, like now we got the supply chain that works, everybody benefits, but for garment factories, even if they earn more for their waste, because they start segregating it next to the cutting table and making it available for recyclers, they still didn't have enough incentive to do that, because that's not their main business. Like if somebody tells you to segregate your waste and you get paid for it, you might do it, but you might not, especially when in Bangladesh there is a lot of problems with informal interest in the market where the waste needs to go beyond the decision of the garment factory. So we realized that we have to work with the brands who have that market power instead of regulation or public sector demand that waste needs to be segregated properly and reported properly. We were relying on brands to do that. So that's what became our business case when we were looking into the data management actually between those parties to support the circulation of textiles. And we ended up having building like a complete win-win business case. It's just the complexity comes from the fact that there are 4 stakeholders instead of 2, as you have in a normal business. So what we then do is that brands get waste mapping reports and then flows of how much waste is generated from their production and how much of that is getting recycled. Factories get verification of the best practice of waste management. We certify, we verify. They use it for HIG reporting, for example, or to their brands to say that we are doing great job. At the same time, waste handlers get the waste pre-segregated from the factories. We offer them code of conduct and an ability to offer a very transparent service to both factories and recyclers. And then recyclers through that get the highest quality waste with lowest cost in the market today. We are spreading quite global, 18 fashion brands, 12 recyclers sourcing the waste through the platform, 150 factories segregating waste on a regular basis, and over 1,000 factories profiled, so we know where the waste is and how much is where. These numbers still are quite small because the commercial model started to kick off only like 2-3 years ago. But the potential is huge because these 18 factories already represent 5 to 10% of fashion industry, and we have majority of textile to textile recycling capacity on our platform, and through the brands we have access to 8,000 factories globally. So this is kind of in a nutshell of what we do. But I kind of also wanted to give you a bit of a more in-depth idea of how, oh yeah, one more slide about this. So if we look at the business case of how we are actually getting the data coming in, I was saying that it is a win-win business case. But the win-win business case it needs to have some kind of cost reduction or some kind of a business benefit for everybody. It can't be just marketing or just nice to have. So where we found this was just to look at like how usually organizations when they or factories when they set up their ERP system, then their goal is to optimize their own processes. They look at what are the places in the process where we can cut cost by reducing time and effort or take out steps that are unnecessary. And the ERP systems, you can't run a company without it. But it's not so common to have an ERP system across the whole supply chain. But in principle, that's what we are doing. We are applying a software platform that covers the whole supply chain from sourcing from the factory as a source of the waste, then the middleman and the recycler. And before we started to do that, it was very common that the waste was flowing through 3-4 different waste handlers. Somebody to pick it up, somebody to buy from different first point collectors and aggregate, then selling it forward to somebody who has an export license from Bangladesh to India, for example, and then the recycling happens in India. So just by saying that, okay, we are making sure that there is one middleman, we are optimizing those processes, we manage and making it more transparent, we managed to reduce the costs from those supply chains significantly. And that's where the business case started to come in. Whereas for us, the transparency and the data actually is a side effect from that. So we didn't start from the question of how can we get the data? How can we get transparency? How can we get everybody to report better? We started by asking where can we cut costs and optimize the process? And that's kind of I think the core essence of digitization. And how fashion industry is actually, when talking about digitization, they are too often talking about just reporting. Somebody needs information. How can I get the information from where? And how can this data be accurate? If we do it as a task of optimizing processes, and there is a win-win benefit, like if I share my data and I get something in return, it's my interest to share accurate data. So also with that thought in mind, we are now participating in these conversations around post-consumer waste management in Europe. How can we take these learnings from the industrial waste and apply that in post-consumer waste? Because there is significant amount of knowledge that we have got from testing and trialing with this system. So yeah, as a last part, I don't know, I'm running out of time, I guess. How much time do I still have?
You still have time.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of go through quickly through some key points of like what are the best things to think about when thinking of like where and how to apply digital approach. So because it's way too often people are thinking that from the angle of like it would be nice to have. It would make it easier if, but it is really important to go into the question of like, what is the job to be done? Like what the person who has a task, what is his or her job that he actually needs to do, or on organization level, what do they actually need to do? Like, for example, garment factory, they don't need to do waste management. This is something that is a problem for them, and usually they solve this problem. The job gets done by finding a trader who takes my waste away. The job is done. So how can we change that? How can we make sure that the job to be done needs to be that they have to do waste segregation, because that is a necessity for a recycler, that the waste doesn't get mixed at the cutting table, because sorting it later manually is adding so much cost into the operations that it's just madness. So how can we make it job to be done for the factory, for example? But so it's like either there already is a job to be done, or you need to implement something that creates a necessity. Then if there is a necessity, what are the solutions that they have already tried so far? For example, if a garment, let's take the same example. If a garment factory needs to do, already has understood that they have to do waste segregation, so then keeping cotton and polyester separate from the cutting table is not something they need a digital system for. They can do that already on their own. So again, offering a sort of digital solution to register what type of waste you've got from the cutting table, that might not fit the purpose, because they have somehow already solved this problem. So next thing to look at is like, where can I find a job to be done that needs a data solution or digitization point? Then, yeah, I mentioned critical versus nice to have features. If it stays on a nice to have level, then people won't start using it. You need to find that sweet spot where there is something critical. Like for us, where we found that is the creating this tension that, or like, yeah, brand wants to do circulation, then brand needs to know how much waste I've got. So brand makes it an obligation for the factory to report how much waste you have. So that became a critical, because then I cannot actually have this brand as my client if that's their code, like part of their code of conduct, that you have to do it, or like requirement. Then another really important questions is the incentives. Who is ready to share which data and for which reason? I'm mentioning here cost reduction, improved margin, marketing, meeting requirements. I guess there could be more things where you can have those very strong incentives. If it's not related to money, then it's not usually strong enough incentive. Marketing can be an incentive, but it's not often strong enough, actually. And incentives can be in a negative way. You have to look at, and that relates also to the trust issue, that it can be that the parties that you deal with have a very strong incentive not to share data. And if you then go to them, like, for example, if we go with a brand to the factory saying that you have to enter certain data into the platform, but that factory has a very strong business incentive not to, then they nod their head and say that, yes, we will. But when you look at the data, either you don't get the data, or the data you get is completely wrong, and you understand it easily by comparing different data points. So these incentives, what are they ready to share, and why is a very critical issue to look into. Then I already talked about processes. How can something be optimized to increase the incentives and reduce the negative bottlenecks and the trust issues? Also, yeah, how to reduce time. Very often I see even my team still today keeps thinking along the way that let's set up this process or add this feature because a client was asking for it. And it sometimes becomes more kind of seems like higher priority if your client is asking for it, or some authority, whereas actually the most important place where impact from data and digitization is found is when you look at which process takes the most time. and where can you turn something more automatic? And yeah, last 2 points. So internal versus between parties. I was telling you about looking into the ERP system of one organization of optimizing process internally. You can do that digital approach between stakeholders, 2 or 3 parties. But in our case, what helped was to become that center point of coordination and have a whole network of parties involved. So yeah, this is kind of like understanding what are the interdependencies between stakeholders, whose data is actually helping whom. I wouldn't suggest running into a complex ecosystem approach as we do, because it's like chicken and egg problem times 4, and every business decision that we have to make, or every process that we internally have, is goes times 4, because it's not just one client segment we work with, but we have four clients. So yeah, that's it. So this is what I had in mind to share with you today. Any questions?